Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Agnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamahyam Darati Svaparantikam. Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yutapatakamalам Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrijatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sarvaitam Savarutam Parijana Sahitam Sri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Visakanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Rate Vrindavaneshwari Vrisabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanchakalpatarupyascha Kripa Sindhupya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashattaya Deshatarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jai Shri Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. So today we continue the journey of self-discovery from 7.2 Shortcomings of Marxism. And happy Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj disappearance day to everyone. In the following dialogue, Srila Prabhupada focuses on Marx's frustrated attempt to eradicate greed from human nature and society at large. A classless society is possible only when Krishna is in the center, says Srila Prabhupada. The real change occurs when we say, nothing belongs to me, everything belongs to God. So Krishna consciousness is the final revolution. Shama Sundar. Karl Marx. His name is so weird. Karl Marx contends that philosophers have only interpreted the world. The point is to change it. His philosophy is often called dialectical materialism because it comes from the dialectic of George Hegel, thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. When applied to society, his philosophy is known as communism. His idea is that for many generations, the bourgeoisie. Hare Krishna.
Bourgeoisie. Bourgeoisie.
Bourgeoisie.
Bourgeoisie. Bourgeoisie.
Bourgeoisie.
Bourgeoisie.
Bourgeoisie.
Bourgeoisie.
Bourgeoisie. The bourgeoisie. The property owners have competed with the proletariat. Let's see what it means. What the middle class, typically with reference to its materialistic values of
bourgeoisie.
Bourgeoisie. Working class.
Proletariat.
Working class, and that this conflict will terminate in the communist society. In other words, the workers will overthrow the capitalistic class and establish so-called dictatorship of the proletariat, which will finally become a classless society. But how is classless, Srila Prabhupada? But how is a classless society possible? Men naturally fall into different classes. Your nature is different from mine, so how can we artificially be brought to the same level? Shama Sundar. His idea is that human nature ideas are molded by the means of production. Therefore, everyone can be trained to participate in the classless society. Then training is required? Yes. And what will be the center of the training for this? Classless society. What will be the motto? The motto is, from each according to his ability, to each according to his need. The idea is that everyone would contribute something and everyone would get what he needed. But everyone's contribution is different. A scientific man contributes something and a philosopher contributes something else. The cow contributes milk and the dog contributes service as a watchdog. Even the trees, the birds, and the beast, everyone is contributing something. So by nature, a reciprocal arrangement is already there among social classes. How can there be a classless society? Shamasundar, well, Marx's idea is that the means of production will be owned in common. No one would have an advantage over anyone else, and thus one person could not exploit another. Marx is thinking in terms of profit. Prabhupada. First, we must know what profit actually is. For example, the American hippies already had profit. They were from the best homes. Their fathers were rich. They had everything. Yet they were not satisfied. They rejected it. No, this idea of classless society based on profit sharing is imperfect. Besides, the communists have not created a classless society. We have seen in Moscow how a poor woman will wash the streets while her boss sits comfortably in his car. So where is the classless society? As long as society is maintained, there must be some higher and lower classification. But if the central point of society is one, then whether one works in a lower or higher position, he doesn't care. For example, our body has different parts, the head, the legs, the hands, but everything works for the stomach. Shamasundar. Actually, the Russians supposedly have the same idea. They claim the common worker is just as glorious as the top scientist or manager. Prabhupada. But in Moscow, we have seen that not everyone is satisfied. One boy who came to us was very unhappy because in Russia, young boys are not allowed to go out at night. Shamasundar. The Russian authorities would say that he has an improper understanding of Marxist philosophy. Prabhupada, that improper understanding is inevitable. They will never be able to create a classless society because, as I have already explained, everyone's mentality is different. Shamasundar, Marx says that if everyone is engaged according to his abilities in a certain type of production and everyone works for the central interest, then everyone's idea will become uniform. Prabhupada, therefore, we must find out the real central interest. In our International Society for Krishna Consciousness, everyone has a central interest in Krishna. Therefore, one person is speaking, another person is typing, another is going to the press or washing the dishes, and no one is grudging because they are all convinced they are serving Krishna. Shamasundar. Marx's idea is that the center is the state. Prabhupada. But a state cannot be perfect. If the Russian state is perfect, then why has Khrushchev driven from power? He was elected premier. Why has he driven from power? Why was he driven from power? Shamasundar, because he was not fulfilling the aims of the people. Prabhupada, well then, what is the guarantee the next premier will do that? There is no guarantee. The same thing will happen again and again because the center, Khrushchev, was imperfect. People begrudged their labor. The same thing is going on in non-communist countries as well. The government is changed, the prime minister is deposed, the president is impeached. So what is the real difference between Russia and communism and other political systems? What is happening in other countries is also happening in Russia, only they call it by a different name. When we talked with Professor Kotovsky of Moscow University, we told him he had to surrender. Either he must surrender to Krishna or to Lenin, but he must surrender. He was taken aback at this. Shamasundar. From studying history, Marx concluded that the characteristics of culture, the social structure, and even the thoughts of the people are determined by the means of economic production. Prabhupada. How does he account for the social disruption in countries like America, which is so advanced in economic production? Shamasundar, he says that capitalism is a decadent form of economic production because it relies on the exploitation of one class by another. Prabhupada. But there is exploitation in the communist countries also. Khrushchev was driven out of power because he was exploiting his position. He was giving big government posts to his sons and son-in-law. Shamasundar. He was deviating from the doctrine. Prabhupada. But since any leader can deviate, how will perfection come? First, the person in the center must be perfect. Then his dictations will be correct. Otherwise, if the leaders are all imperfect men, what is the use of changing this or that? The corruption will continue. Shamasundar. Presumably, the perfect leader would be the one who practiced Marx's philosophy without deviation. Prabhupada. But Marx's philosophy is also imperfect. His proposal for a classless society is unworkable. There must be one class of man to administer the government and one class of man to sweep the streets. How can there be a classless society? What should a sweeper be satisfied seeing someone else in the administrative post? He will think, he's forcing me to work as a sweeper in the street while he sits comfortably in a chair. In our international society, I am also holding the superior post. I am sitting in a chair and you are offering me garlands and the best food. Why? Because you see a perfect man whom you can follow. That mentality must be there. Everyone in the society must be able to say, yes, here's a perfect man. Let him sit in a chair and let us all bow down and work like menials. Where is that perfect man in the communist countries? Shamasundar. The Russian claim that Lenin is a perfect man. Lenin? But no one is following Lenin. Lenin's only perfection was that he overthrew the Tsar's government. What other perfection has he shown? The people are not happy simply reading Lenin's books. I studied the people in Moscow. They are unhappy. The government cannot force them to be happy artificially. Unless there is a perfect ideal man in the street, there cannot possibly be a classless society. Shamasundar. Perhaps they see the workers and the managers in the same way that we do, in the absolute sense. Since everyone is serving the state, the sweeper is as good as the administrator. Prabhupada. But unless the state gives perfect satisfaction to the people, there will always be distinctions between higher and lower classes. In the Russian state, the sense of perfection in the center is lacking. Shamasundar. Their goal is the production of material goods for the enhancement of human well-being. Prabhupada. That is useless. Economic production in America has no comparison in the world, yet still people are dissatisfied. The young men are confused. It is nonsensical to think that simply by increasing production, everyone will become satisfied. No one will be satisfied. Man is not meant simply for eating. He has mental necessities, intellectual necessities, spiritual necessities. In India, many people sit alone silently in the jungle and practice yoga. They do not require anything. How will increasing production satisfy them? If someone were to say to them, if you give up this yoga practice, I will give you 200 bags of rice, they would laugh at the proposal. It is animalistic to think that simply by increasing production, everyone will become satisfied. Real happiness does not depend on either production or starvation, but upon peace of mind. For example, if a child is crying but the mother does not know why, the child will not stop simply by giving him some milk. Sometimes this actually happens. The mother cannot understand why her child is crying, and so she is giving him her breast. He continues to cry. Similarly, dissatisfaction in human society is not caused solely by low economic production. That is nonsense. There are many causes of dissatisfaction. The practical example is America, where there is sufficient production of everything, yet the young men are becoming hippies. They are dissatisfied, confused. No one simply by increasing economic production. No, simply by increasing economic production, people will not become satisfied. Marx's knowledge is insufficient. Perhaps because he came from a country where people were starving, he had that idea. Shamasundar. Yes, now we've seen that production of material goods alone will not make people happy. Prabhupada. Because they do not know what real happiness comes from. They do not know that real happiness comes from spiritual understanding. That understanding is given in the Bhagavad Gita. God is the supreme enjoyer and he is the proprietor of everything. We are not actually enjoyers. We are all workers. These two things must be there, an enjoyer and a worker. For example, in our body, the stomach is the enjoyer and all other parts of the body are workers. So this system is natural. There must always be someone who is the enjoyer and someone who is the worker. It is present in the capitalist system also. In Russia, there is always conflict between the managers and the workers. The workers say, if this is a classless society, why is that man sitting comfortably and ordering us to work? The Russians have not been able to avoid this dilemma, and it cannot be avoided. There must be one class of men who are the directors or enjoyers, and other class of men who are the workers. Therefore, the only way to have a truly classless society is to find that method by which both the managers and the workers will feel equal happiness. For example, if the stomach is hungry and the eyes see some food, immediately the brain will say, "Oh, legs, please go there," and hand, "Pick it up," and now please put it in the mouth. Immediately food goes into the stomach, and as soon as the stomach is satisfied, the eyes are satisfied, the legs are satisfied, and the hand is satisfied. This is an amazing example. But Shamasundar. But Marx would use this as a perfect example of communism. Prabhupada. But he has neglected to find out the real stomach. Shamasundar. His is the material stomach. Srila Prabhupada. But the material stomach is always hungry again. It can never be satisfied. In the Krishna consciousness movement, we have substance for feeding our brains, our minds, and our souls. Yasya prasadat bhagavat prasada. If the spiritual master is satisfied, then Krishna is satisfied. And if Krishna is satisfied, then everyone is satisfied. Therefore, you are all trying to satisfy your spiritual master. Similarly, if the communist countries can come up with a dictator who is satisfied, who, if satisfied, automatically gives satisfaction to all the people, then we will accept such a classless society. But this is impossible. A classless society is only possible when Krishna is in the center. For the satisfaction of Krishna, the intellectual can work in his own way. The administrator can work in his way. The merchant can work in his way, and the laborer can work in his way. That is truly a classless society. Shamasundar. How is this different from the communist country, where all sorts of men contribute for the same central purpose, which is the state? Prabhupada. The difference is that if the state is not perfect, no one will willingly contribute to it. They may be forced to contribute, but they will not voluntarily contribute unless there is a perfect state in the center. For example, the hands, legs, and brain are working in perfect harmony for the satisfaction of the stomach. Why? Because they know without a doubt that by satisfying the stomach, they will all share the energy and also be satisfied. Therefore, unless the people have this kind of perfect faith in the leader of the country, there is no possibility of a classless society. Shamasundar. The communists theorize that if the workers contribute to the central fund, he will get satisfaction in return. Prabhupada. Yes, but if he sees imperfection in the center, he will not work enthusiastically because he will have no faith that he will get full satisfaction. That perfection of the state will never be there, and therefore the workers will always remain dissatisfied. Shamasundar. The propagandists play upon this dissatisfaction and tell people that foreigners are causing it. But if the people were truly satisfied, they could not be influenced by outsiders. If you're satisfied that your spiritual master is perfect, that he is guiding you nicely, will you be influenced by outsiders? Shamasundar, no. Prabhupada, because the communist state will never be perfect. There is no possibility of a classless society. Shamasundar. Marx examines history and sees that in Greek times, in Roman times, and in the Middle Age, slaves were always required for production. Prabhupada. The Russians are also creating slaves, the working class. Joseph Stalin stayed in power simply by killing all his enemies. He killed so many men that he is recorded in history as the greatest criminal. He was certainly imperfect, yet he held the position of dictator, and the people were forced to obey him. Shamasundar. His followers have denounced him. Shaprapad. That's all well and good, but his followers should also be denounced. The point is that in any society there must be a leader. There must be dictators. There must be workers, but everyone should be satisfied that they forget the difference. but everyone should be so satisfied that they forget the difference. Shamasunda, no envy. Prabhupada, no envy. But that perfection is not possible in the material world. Therefore, Marx's theories are useless. Shamasundar. But on the other hand, the capitalists also make slaves of their work. The capitalists also make slaves of their workers. Prabhupada. Wherever there is materialistic activity, there must be imperfection. But if they make Krishna the center, then all problems will be resolved. Shamasundar. Are you saying that any system of organizing the means of production is bound to be full of exploitation? Prabhupada. Yes, certainly. The materialistic mentality means exploitation. Then what is the solution? Shamasundar. Srila Prabhupada. Krishna consciousness. Shamasundar. How is that? Srila Prabhupada. Just make Krishna the center and work for him. Then everyone will be satisfied. As it is stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 4:31-14. Yata tarormula nisechanena trapyanti tachskanda bujopasaka pranopa pahara chayatendriyanam tataiva sarvahanam achuteja. If you simply pour water on the root of a tree, all the branches, twigs, leaves, and flowers will be nourished. Similarly, everyone can be satisfied simply by achuteja. Achyuta means Krishna and Ija means worship. So this is the formula for a classless society. Make Krishna God the center and do everything for him. There are no classes in our international society for Krishna consciousness. Now you are writing philosophy, but if I want you to wash dishes, you will do so immediately because you know that whatever you do, you are working for Krishna and for your spiritual master. In the material world, different kinds of work have different values. But in Krishna consciousness, everything is done on the absolute platform. Whether you wash dishes or or write books or worship the deity, the value is the same because you are serving Krishna. That is a classless society. Actually, the perfect classless society is Vrindavan. In Vrindavan, some are cowherd boys, some are cows, some are trees, some are fathers, some are mothers, but the center is Krishna, and everyone is satisfied simply by loving him. When all people become Krishna conscious and understand how to love him, then there will be a classless society. Otherwise, it is not possible. Shamasundar. Marx's definition of communism is the common or public ownership of the means of production and the abolition of private property. In our international society for Krishna consciousness, don't we have the same idea? We also say, nothing is mine. We have also abolished private property. Prabhupada. Why the communists say nothing is mine? He thinks everything belongs to the state. The state, however, is simply an extended mind. For example, if I am the head of family, I might say, I do not want anything for myself, but I want many things for my children. Mahatma Gandhi, who sacrificed so much to drive the English out of India, was at the same time thinking, I'm a very good man. I am doing national work. Therefore, the so-called nationalism or so-called communism is simply extended selfishness. The duality remains the same. The real change occurs when we say, nothing belongs to me. Everything belongs to God, Krishna, and therefore I should use everything in his service. That is factual. Shomasundar. Marx says that the capitalists are parasites living at the cost of the workers. Shraprapad. But the communists are also living at the cost of the workers. The managers are driving. What is it? What is this word? Driving. Drawing. Is it draw? Yeah, it's drawing. The managers are drawing big salaries, and the common workers are dissatisfied. Indeed, their godless society is becoming more and more troublesome. Unless everyone accepts God as the only enjoyer and see himself simply as his servant, there will be always conflict. In the broad sense, there is no difference between the communist and the capitalist because God is not accepted as the supreme enjoyer and proprietor in either system. Actually, no property belongs to either the communist or the capitalist. Everything belongs to God. Shamasundar. Marx condemns the capitalist for making a profit. He says that profit making is exploitation and that the capitalists are unnecessary for the production of commodities. Srila Prabhupada. Profit making may be wrong, but exploitative tendency is always there, whether it is a communist or a capitalist system. In Bengal, it is said that during the winter season, the bugs cannot come out because of the severe cold. So they become dried up, being unable to suck any blood. But as soon as the summer season comes, the bugs get the opportunity to come out. So they immediately bite someone and suck his blood to their full satisfaction. Our mentality in this material world is the same, to exploit others and become wealthy. Whether you are communist in the winter season or a capitalist in the summer season, your tendency is to exploit others. Unless there is change of heart, this exploitation will go on. I once knew a mill worker who acquired some money. Then he became the proprietor of the mill and took advantage of his good fortune to become a capitalist. Henry Ford is another example. He was an errand boy, but he got the opportunity to become a capitalist. There are many such instances. So, to a greater or lesser degree, the propensity is always there in human nature to exploit others and become wealthy. Unless this mentality is changed, there is no point in changing from a capitalist to a communist society. Material life means that everyone is seeking some profit, some adoration, and some position. By threats, the state can force people to curb this tendency. But for how long? Can they change everyone's mind by force? No, it is impossible. Therefore, Marx's proposition is nonsense. Shamasundar. Marx thinks the minds of people can be changed by forced conditioning. Prabhupada. That is not possible. Even a child cannot be conceived by force. What to speak of mature, educated man? We have the real process of changing people's mind, chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, Cheto Darpanam Marjanam, Sishyanta Lila 2012. This process cleanses the heart of material desires. We have seen that people in Moscow are not happy. They are simply waiting for another revolution. We talked to one working class boy who was very unhappy. When a pot of rice is boiling, you can take one grain and press it between your fingers, and if it's hot, you can understand all the rice is boiling. Thus, we can understand the position of the Russian people from the sample of that boy. We could also get further ideas by talking with Professor Kotowski from the India Department of Moscow University. How foolish he was. He said that after that everything is finished. If this is his knowledge and if that young boy is a sample of the citizenry, then the situation in Russia is very bleak. They may theorize about so many things, but we could not even purchase sufficient groceries in Moscow. There were no vegetables, fruits, or rice, and the milk was of poor quality. If that Madrasi gentleman had not contributed some dal and rice, then practically speaking, we would have starved. The Russian diet seemed to consist of only meat and liquor. This is like Finnish. There's no vegetables, there's no proper fruits, there is only one type of rice. Milk is poor quality. And they only take meat and liquor. That's true. Some fast food and liquor. Shyama Sundar. The communists play upon this universal profit motive. The worker who produces the most units at his factory is glorified by the state or receives a small bonus. Srila Prabhupada. Why should he get a bonus? Shyama Sundar. To give him some incentive to work hard. Srila Prabhupada. Just to satisfy his tendency to lord it over others and make a profit, his superiors bribe him. This Russian communist idea is very good, provided the citizens do not want any profit. But that is impossible because everyone wants profit. The state cannot destroy this tendency either by love or by force. Shyama Sundar, the communists try to centralize everything, money, communications, and transport in the hands of the state. Prabhupada, but what benefit will there be in that? As soon as all the wealth is centralized, the members of the central government will appropriate it, just as Khrushchev did. These are all useless ideas as long as the tendency for exploitation is not reformed. The Russians have organized their country according to Marx's theories, yet all their leaders have turned out to be cheaters. Where is their program for reforming the cheating propensity? Shamasundar. Their program is to first change the social condition, and then they believe the corrupt mentality will change automatically. Srila Prabhupada, impossible. Such repression will simply cause a reaction in the form of another revolution. Shamasundar, are you implying that the people's mentality must first be changed, and then a change in the societal structure will naturally follow? Prabhupada, yes, but the leaders will never be able to train all the people to think that everything belongs to the state. This idea is simply a utopian nonsense. Shamasundar, Marx has another slogan: human nature has no reality. He says that man's nature changes through history according to material conditions. Prabhupada, he does not know what the real human nature is. It is certainly true that everything in the cosmic creation or Jagat is changing. Your body changes daily, everything is changing, just like waves in the ocean. This is not a very advanced philosophy. Marx's theory is also being changed, it cannot last. But man does have a fundamental nature that never changes, his spiritual nature. We are teaching people to come to the standard of acting according to their spiritual nature, which will never change. Acting spiritually means serving Krishna. If we try to serve Krishna now, we will continue to serve Krishna when we go to Vaikuntha, the spiritual world. Therefore, loving service to Lord Krishna is called Nitya, or eternal. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Nitya Yukta Upasate, my pure devotees perpetually worship me with devotion. The communists give up Krishna and replace him with the state. Then they expect to get people to think, nothing in my favor, everything in favor of the state. But people will never accept this idea. It is impossible. Let the rascals try it. All they can do is simply force the people to work, as Stalin did. As soon as he found someone opposed to him, he immediately cut his throat. The same disease is still there today. So how will their program be successful? Shamasundar, their idea is that human nature has no reality of its own. It is simply a product of the material environment. Thus, by putting a man in the factory and making him identify with the state and something like scientific achievement, they think that they can transform him into a selfless person. Srila Prabhupada. But because he has the basic disease, envy, he will remain selfish. When he sees that he is working so hard, but that the profit is not coming to him, his enthusiasm will immediately slacken. In Bengal, there is a proverb: as a proprietor, I can turn sand into gold, but as soon as I am no longer the proprietor, the gold becomes sand. The Russian people are in this position. They are not as rich as the Europeans or the Americans, and because of this, they are unhappy. Shamasundar, one of the methods the authorities in Russia is to constantly whip the people into believing there may be a war at any moment. Then they think, to protect our country, we must work hard. Yeah, maybe this is why they are attacking now everywhere. Srila Prabhupada. If the people cannot make any profit of their work, however, they will eventually lose all interest in the country. The average man will think, whether I work or not, I get the same result. I cannot adequately feed and clothe my family. Yeah, this is going in Finland also. Everyone is jobless. They're thinking, whether I work or not, I get the same result. Then they put the toimeentulotukihakemus. That's so funny. Then he will begin to lose his insensitive to work. Yeah. Prabhupada knew even the Kela system perfectly. It's so funny. A scientist will see that despite his high position, his wife and children are dressed just like the common laborer. Shamasundar. Marx says that the industrial and scientific work is the highest kind of activity. Srila Prabhupada. But unless the scientists and the industrialists receive sufficient profit, they will be reluctant to work for the state. Shyamasundar, the Russian goal is the production of material goods for the enhancement of human well-being. Srila Prabhupada, their human well-being actually means, if you don't agree with me, I'll cut your throat. This is their well-being. Stalin had this idea of human well-being, but anyone whom disagreed with his very version of it was killed or imprisoned. They may say that a few must suffer for the sake of many, but we have personally seen that Russia has achieved neither general happiness nor prosperity. For example, in Moscow, none of the big buildings have been recently built. They are old and ravaged or poorly renovated. Also, at the stores, the people had to stand in long lines to make purchase. These are indications that economic conditions are unsound. Shyamasundar. Marx considered religion an illusion that must be condemned. Prabhupada, the divisions between different religious faiths may be an illusion, but Marx's philosophy is also an illusion. Shyamasundar, do you mean that it's not being practiced? Srila Prabhupada, in the 60 years since the Russian Revolution, his philosophy has become distorted. On the other hand, Lord Brahma began the Vedic religion countless years ago, and though foreigners have been trying to devastate it for the last 2,000 years, it is still intact. Vedic religion is not an illusion, at least not for India. Shyamasundar. Here is Marx's famous statement about religion. He says, religion is the sigh of the oppressed creature, the heart of the heartless world, just as it is the spirit of the spiritless situation. It is the opium of the people. Prabhupada, he does not know what religion is. His definition is false. The Vedas state that the religion is the course of action given by God. God is a fact, and his law is also a fact. It is not an illusion. Krishna gives the definition of religion in Bhagavad Gita 1866. Sarvadharmam parityagya mamekam sharanam raja. To surrender unto God. The definition of religion can be found from this. Nice. Sarvadharmam parityagya. To surrender unto God. This is religion. Shyamasundar. Marx believes everything is produced from economic struggle, and that religion is a technique invented by the bourgeois. Hare Krishna. What was this? Bourgeois.
Bourgeoisie.
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 Bourgeoisie. By the bourgeoisie or the capitalists to dissuade the masses from revolution by promising them a better existence after death. Prabhupada, he himself has created a philosophy that is presently being enforced by the coercion and killing. Shyamasundar, and he promised that in the future things will be better. So he's guilty of the very thing that he condemns religion for. Prabhupada, as we have often explained, religion is that part of our nature which is permanent, which we cannot give up. No one can give up his religion. And what is that religion? Service. Marx desires to serve humanity by putting forward his philosophy. Therefore, that is his religion. Everyone is trying to render some service. The father is trying to serve his family. The statesman is trying to serve his country. And the philanthropist is trying to serve all humanity. Whether you are Karl Marx or Stalin or Mahatma Gandhi, a Hindu, a Muslim, or a Christian, you must serve. Because we are presently rendering service to so many people and so many things, we are becoming confused. Therefore, Krishna advises us to give up all this service and serve him alone. Sarvadharmam parityagya mamekam sharanam raja ham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshaishyami ma suchaha. Abandon all varieties of service and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. Bhagavad Gita, 1866, Shamasundar. The communist and even to a certain extent the capitalist believe that service to the production of goods is the only real service. Therefore, they condemn us because we are not producing anything tangible. Prabhupada, how can they condemn us? We are giving service to humanity by teaching the highest knowledge. A high court judge does not produce any grains in the field. He sits in a chair and gets 25,000 or 30,000. Does that mean he is not rendering any service? Of course he is. The theory that unless one performs manual labor in the factory or the fields, he's not doing service would simply give credit to the peasant and the worker. It is a peasant philosophy. There is a story about a king and his prime minister. Once the king's salaried workers complained, "We are actually working, and this minister is doing nothing. Yet you are paying him such a large salary. Why is that?" The king then called his ministers in and also had someone bring in an elephant. "Please take this elephant and weigh it," the king said to his workers. The workers took the elephant to all the markets, but they could not find a scale large enough to weigh the animal. When they returned to the palace, the king asked, "What happened?" One of the workers answered, "Sir, we could not find a scale large enough to weigh the elephant." Then the king addressed the prime minister. "Will you please weigh this elephant?" "Yes, sir," said the prime minister, and he took the elephant away. He returned within a few minutes and said, "It weighs 11,650 pounds. All the workers were astonished. "How did you weigh the elephant so quickly?" One of them asked. "Did you find some very large scale?" The minister replied, "No, it is impossible to weigh an elephant on a scale. I went to the river, took the elephant on a boat, and noted the watermark. After taking the elephant off the boat, I put weights in the boat until the same watermark was reached. Then I had the elephant's weights." What an intelligent person he was. Amazing story by Prabhupada. Then I had the elephant's weight. The king said to his workers, "Now do you see the difference? One who has intelligence has strength, not the fools and the rascals. Marx and his followers are simply fools and rascals. We don't take advice from them. We take advice from Krishna or his representative." Shamasundar. So religion is not simply a police force to keep people in illusion? Prabhupada, no. Religion means to serve the spirit. That is religion. Everyone is rendering service, but no one knows where his service will be most successful. Therefore, Krishna says, "Serve me, and you will serve the spiritual society." That is real religion. The Marxist wants to build so-called perfect society without religion. Yet even up to this day, because India's foundation is religion, people all over the world adore India. Shamasundar. Marx says that God does not create man, rather, man creates God. Prabhupada, that is more nonsense. From what he says, I can tell he's nonsensical rascal and a fool. One cannot understand that someone is fool unless he talks. A fool may dress very nicely and sit like a gentleman amongst gentlemen, but we can tell the fools from the learned men by their speech. Shamasundar, Marx's follower was Nikolai Lenin. He reinforced all of Marx's ideas and added few of his own. He believed that revolution is a fundamental fact of history. He said that history moves in leaps, and that in progress toward the communist leap, he wanted Russia to leap into the dictatorship of the proletariat, which he called the final stage of historical development. Srila Prabhupada. No, we can say with confidence, and they may note it carefully, that after the Bolshevik Revolution, there will be many other revolutions. Because as long as people live on the mental plane, there will be only revolution. Our proposition is to give up all these mental concussions and come to the spiritual platform. If one comes to the spiritual platform, there will be no more revolution. As Dhruva Maharaj said, "Nada param param vidmina yatra nada." Now that I am seeing God, I am completely satisfied. Now all kinds of theorizing processes are finished. So God consciousness is the final revolution. There will be repeated revolutions in this material world unless people come to Krishna consciousness. The Hare Krishna revolution. Srila Prabhupada. The Vedic injunction is that people are searching after knowledge, and that when one understands the absolute truth, he understands everything. Yasmin vignate sarvam evam vignatam bhavati. People are trying to approach an objective, but they do not know that their final objective is Krishna. They are simply trying to make adjustments with so many materialistic revolutions. They have no knowledge that they are spiritual beings, and that unless they go back to the spiritual world and associate with the Supreme Spirit, God, there is no question of happiness. We are like fish out of water. Just as a fish cannot be happy unless he is in the water, we cannot be happy apart from the spiritual world. We are part and parcel of the Supreme Spirit Krishna, but we have left his association and fallen from the spiritual world because of our desire to enjoy this material world. So unless we awaken the understanding of our spiritual position and go back home to spiritual world, we can never be happy. We can go on theorizing for many lifetimes, but we will only see one revolution after another. The old order changes, yielding its place to the new, or in the other words, history repeats itself. Hare Krishna. Hero Prabhu, if you can read, you can also continue. And Dandavat Pranam Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam. Marx says that there are always two conflicting properties in material nature, and that the inner pulsation of opposite force causes history to take leaps from one revolution to another. He claims that the communist revolution is the final revolution because it is the perfect resolution of all social and political contradictions. Srila Prabhupada. If the communist idea is spiritualized, then it will become perfect. As long as the communist idea remains materialistic, it cannot be the final revolution. They believe that the state is the owner of everything, but the state is not the owner. The real owner is God. When they come to this conclusion, then the communist idea will be perfect. We also have a communist philosophy. They say that everything must be done for the state, but in our international society for Krishna consciousness, we are actually practicing perfect communism by doing everything for Krishna. We know Krishna is the supreme enjoyer of the result of all work. Bhoktaram Yakya Tapasam, Bhagavad Gita 5.29. The communist philosophy, as it is now practiced, is vague, but it can become perfect if they accept the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita that Krishna is the supreme proprietor, the supreme enjoyer, and the supreme friend of everyone. Then people will be happy. Now they mistrust the state, but if the people accept Krishna as their friend, they will have perfect confidence in him, just as Arjuna was perfectly confident in Krishna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. The great victory of Arjuna and his associates on the battlefield of Kurukshetra showed that his confidence in Krishna was justified. Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna, Yastra Partho Dhanurdhara, Tatra Shri I can see that I have cracked. Okay, Vijayo Bhutir Dhruva Nitir Matir Mama. Wherever there is Krishna, the master of all mystics, and wherever there is Arjuna, the supreme archer, there will also certainly be opulence, victory, extraordinary power, and morality. That is my opinion. Bhagavad Gita 18.28. So if Krishna is at the center of society, then the people will be perfectly secure and prosperous. The communist idea is welcome, provided they are prepared to replace the so-called state with God. That is religion.
Haribol. Let's see how long this next one is. Haribol, let's read one more.
7.3 Psychoanalysis and the Soul. Presenting a Vedic perspective on psychology, Srila Prabhupada discusses the subject with his disciple Shyama Sundara in the following conversation recorded in Calcutta on October 5th, 1971. Srila Prabhupada says, by speculating on some shock that may or may not have occurred in childhood, one will never discover the root disease. He, Freud, did not know the basic principle of spiritual understanding, which is that we are not this body. We are different from this body and we are transmigrating from one body to another. Shyama Sundara. Sigmund Freud's idea was that many psychological problems originate with traumatic experiences in childhood or in infancy. His method of cure was to have the patient try to recall these painful events and analyze them. Srila Prabhupada. But he did not know that one must again become an infant. After this life, one will be put into another womb and the same traumatic experiences will happen again. Therefore, it is the duty of the spiritual master and the parents to save the child from taking another birth. The opportunity of this human form of life is that we can understand the horrible experiences of birth, death, old age, and disease, and act so that we shall not be forced to go through the same things again. Otherwise, after death, we shall have to take birth in a womb and suffer repeated miseries. Shyama Sundara. Freud treated many people suffering from neuroses. For instance, suppose a man is sexually impotent. By recalling his childhood, he may remember some harmful experience with his father or mother that caused him to be repelled by women. In this way, he can resolve the conflict and lead a normal sex life. Srila Prabhupada. However, even in the so-called normal condition, the pleasure derived from sexual intercourse is simply frustrating and insignificant. For ordinary men attached to the materialistic way of life, their only pleasure is sexual intercourse. But the Shastras, Vedic scriptures, say, Yan maitunadi grihamedi sukam hitucham. Srimad Bhagavatam 7.9.45. The pleasure derived from sexual intercourse is 10th class at best. 10th class, because they have no idea of the pleasure of Krishna consciousness. The materialists regard sex as the highest pleasure. And how is it actually experienced? We have an itch. When we scratch it, we feel some pleasure. But the after effects of sexual pleasure are abominable. The mother has to undergo labor pains, and the father has to take responsibility for raising the children nicely and giving them an education. Of course, if one is irresponsible like cats and dogs, that is another thing. But for those who are actual gentlemen, is it not painful to bear and raise children? Certainly. Therefore, everyone is avoiding children by contraceptive methods. But much better is to follow the injunction of the Shastras. Simply try to tolerate the itching sensation and avoid so much pain. This is real psychology. That itching sensation can be tolerated if one practices Krishna consciousness. Then one will not be very attracted by sex life. Freud's philosophy is that people have neuroses or disorders of their total personality, various conflicts and anxieties, and that all this originate with the sexual impulse. That we admit, an embodied living being must have hunger and he must have the sex impulse. We find that even in the animals these impulses are there. Freud believed that the ego tries to restrain these primitive drives and that all anxieties arise from this conflict. Our explanation is as follows. Materialistic life is no doubt very painful. As soon as one acquires a material body, he must always suffer three kinds of miseries. Miseries caused by other living beings, miseries caused by the elements, and miseries caused by his own body and mind. So the whole problem is how to stop these miseries and attain permanent happiness. Unless one stops his materialistic way of life, with his threefold miseries and repeated birth and death, there is no question of happiness. The whole Vedic civilization is based on how one can cure this materialistic disease. If we can cure this disease, its symptoms will automatically vanish. Freud is simply dealing with the symptoms of the basic disease. When you have a disease, sometimes you have headaches, sometimes your leg aches, sometimes you have a pain in your stomach, and so on. But if your disease is cured, then all your symptoms disappear. That is our program. Shyama Sundara. In his theory of psychoanalysis, Freud states that by Freud states that by remembering and re-evaluating emotional shocks from our childhood, we can release the tension we are feeling now. Srila Prabhupada. But what is the guarantee that one will not get shocked again? He may cure the results of one shock, but there is no guarantee that the patient will not receive another shock. Therefore, Freud's treatment is useless. Our program is total cure. No more shocks of any kind. If one is situated in real Krishna consciousness, he can face the most severe type of adversity and remain completely undisturbed. In our Krishna consciousness movement, we are giving people this ability. Freud tries to cure the reactions of one kind of shock, but other shocks will come one after another. This is how material nature works. If you solve one problem, another problem arises immediately. And if you solve that one, another one comes. As long as you are under the control of material nature, these repeated shocks will come. But if you become Krishna conscious, there are no more shocks. Shama Sundara. Freud's idea is that the basic instinct in the human personality is the sexual drive or libido, and that if the expressions of a child's sexuality are inhibited, then his personality becomes disordered. Srila Prabhupada. Everyone has the sex appetite. This tendency is innate. But our Brahmacharya system restricts a child's sex life from the earliest stages of his development and diverts his attention to Krishna consciousness. As a result, there is very little chance that he will suffer such personality disorders. In the Vedic age, the leaders of society knew that if a person engaged in unrestricted sex indulgence, then the duration of his materialistic life would increase. He would have to accept a material body birth after birth. Therefore, the Shastras enjoin that one may have sexual intercourse only if married. Otherwise, it is illicit. In our Krishna consciousness society, we prohibit illicit sex, but not legal sex. In the Bhagavad Gita 7.11, Krishna says, Dharma viruddho bhuteshu kamosmi paratarsapa. I am sexual intercourse that is not against irreligious principles. This means that sex must be regulated. Everyone has the tendency to have sex unrestrictedly, and in Western countries they are actually doing this. But according to the Vedic system, there must be restrictions. And not only must sex be restricted, but meat eating, gambling, and drinking as well. So in our society, we have eliminated all these things, and our Western students are becoming pure devotees of Krishna. The people at large, however, must at least restrict these sinful activities as explained in the Vedic Shastras. The Vedic system of Varnashrama Dharma for social orders and for spiritual orders is so scientific that everything is automatically adjusted. Life becomes very peaceful and everyone can make progress in Krishna consciousness. If the Vedic system is followed by human society, there will be no more of these mental disturbances. Shamasundara. Freud says that sexual energy is not only expressed in sexual intercourse, but is associated with a wide variety of pleasurable bodily sensations, such as pleasures of the mouth, like eating and sucking. Srila Prabhupada. That is confirmed in the Shastras. Janmaitunadi grihamedi sukham. Srimad Bhagavatam 7.9.45. The only pleasure in this material world is sex. The word adi indicates that the basic principle is maituna, sexual intercourse. The whole system of materialistic life revolves around the sexual pleasure. But this pleasure is like one drop of water in the desert. The desert requires an ocean of water. If you find one drop of water in a desert, you can certainly say, here is some water. But what is its value? Similarly, there is certainly some pleasure in sex life, but what is the value of that pleasure? Compared to the unlimited pleasure of Krishna consciousness, it is like one drop of water in the desert. Everyone is seeking unlimited pleasure, but no one is becoming satisfied. They are having sex in so many different ways, and the young girls walking on the street are almost naked. The whole society has become degraded. Now girl is trying to attract a man. The men take advantage of the situation. There is a saying in Bengal, when milk is available in the marketplace, what is the use of keeping a cow? So men are declining to keep a wife because sex is so cheap. They are deserting their families. And the more that men become attached to women, the the more the female population of the world will increase. Shamasundara, how does it result in more women? Srila Prabhupada, when men have more sex, they lose the power to beget a male child. If the woman is sexually more powerful, a girl is born. When the man is more powerful, a boy is born. This is Ayurvedic science. For instance, in the Punjab state of India, there are fewer women because the men are very stout and strong. So when women are very easily available, the men become weak and beget female children. Sometimes they become impotent. If sex life is not restricted, there are so many disasters. And now we are actually seeing them: impotency, no marriage, increased female population. But no one knows why these things are happening or how human psychology can be controlled to avoid them. For this, they must look to the perfect system of Vedic civilization. Sundara. Freud says that as the child grows up, he begins to learn that by giving up immediate sensual satisfaction, he can gain a greater benefit later on. Srila Prabhupada. But even this so-called greater benefit is illusory because it is still based on the principle of material pleasure. The only way to entirely give up these lower pleasures is to take to Krishna consciousness. As Krishna states in the Bhagavad Gita 2.59, Param Drishtva Nivartate, by experiencing a higher taste, he is fixed in consciousness. And as Yamunacharya said, since I have been engaged in the transcendental loving service of Krishna, realizing ever new pleasure in him, whenever I think of sex pleasure, I spit at the thought, my lips curl in distaste. That is Krishna consciousness. Our prescription is that in the beginning of life, the child should be taught self-restraint, brahmacharya, and when he is past 20, he can marry. In the beginning, he should learn how to restrain his senses. If a child is taught to become saintly, his semen rises to his brain, and he is able to understand spiritual values. Okay, wasting semen decreases intelligence. Oh, I didn't know this. So from the beginning, if he is a brahmacharya and does not misuse his semen, then he will become intelligent and strong and fully grown. For want of this education, everyone's brain and bodily growth are being stunted. After the boy has been trained as brahmachari, if he still wants to enjoy sex, he may get married. But because he then has full strength of body and brain, he will immediately beget a male child. And because he has been trained from childhood to renounce materialistic enjoyment, when he is 50 years old, he can retire from household life. At that time, naturally, his firstborn child will be 25 years old, and he can take responsibility for maintaining the household. Household life is simply a license for sex life. That's all. Sex is not sex is not required, but one who cannot restrain himself is given a license to get married and have sex. This is the real program that will save society. By speculating on some shock that may or may not have occurred in childhood, one will never discover the root disease. The sex impulse, as well as the impulse to become intoxicated and to eat meat, is present from the very beginning of life. Therefore, one must restrain himself, otherwise he will be implicated. Shamasundara. So the Western system of bringing up children seems artificial because the parents either repress the child too severely or don't restrict him at all. Srila Prabhupada, that is not good. The Vedic system is to give the child direction for becoming Krishna conscious. There must be some repression, but our use of repression is different. We say this child must rise early in the morning, worship the deity in the temple, and chant Hare Krishna. In the beginning, force may be necessary, otherwise the child will not become habituated. But the idea is to divert his attention to Krishna-conscious activities. Then, when he realizes he is not his body, all difficulties will disappear. As one increases his Krishna consciousness, he becomes neglectful of all these material things. So Krishna consciousness is the prime remedy, the panacea for all diseases. Shamasundara. Freud divided the personality into three departments: the ego, the superego, and the ID. The ID is the irrational instinct for enjoyment. The ego is one's image of his own body and is the instinct for self-preservation. The superego represents the moral restrictions of parents and other authorities. Srila Prabhupada. It is certainly true that everyone has some false egoism or ahankara. For example, Freud thought he was Austrian. That is false ego, or identifying oneself with one's place of birth. We are giving everyone the information that this identification with the material body is ignorance. It is due to ignorance only that I think I am Indian, American, Hindu, or Muslim. This is egoism of the inferior quality. The superior egoism is I am Brahman, I am an eternal servant of Krishna. If a child is taught the superior egoism from the beginning, then automatically his false egoism is stopped. Jamasundara, Freud says that the ego tries to preserve the individual by organizing and controlling the irrational demands of the ID. In other words, if the ID is something like food, it automatically demands to eat it, and the ego controls that desire in order to preserve the individual. The superego reinforces this control. So these three systems are always conflicting in the personality. Srila Prabhupada, but the basic principle is false, since Freud has no conception of the soul existing beyond the body. He is considering the body only. Therefore, he is a great fool. According to Bhagavata philosophy, anyone in the bodily concept of life, anyone who identifies this body composed of mucus, bile, and air is as his self is no better than an ass. Shama Sundara. Then these interactions of the ID, the ego, and the superego are all bodily interactions. Srila Prabhupada, yes, they are all subtle bodily interactions. The mind is the first element of the subtle body. The gross senses are controlled by the mind, which in turn is controlled by the intelligence. And the intelligence is controlled by the ego. So if the ego is false, then everything is false. If I falsely identify with this body because of false ego, then anything based on this false idea is also false. This is called Maya, or illusion. The whole of Vedic education aims at getting off this false platform and coming to the real platform of spiritual knowledge, called Brahma Jnana. When one comes to the knowledge that he is spirit, soul, he immediately becomes happy. All his troubles are due to the false ego, and as soon as the individual realizes his true ego, the blazing fire of material existence is immediately extinguished. These philosophers are simply describing the blazing fire, but we are trying to get him out of the burning prison house of the material world altogether. They may attempt to make him happy within the fire, but how can they be successful? He must be saved from the fire. Then he will be happy. That is the message of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That is Lord Krishna's message in the Bhagavad Gita. Freud identifies the body with the soul. He does not know the basic principle of spiritual understanding, which is that we are not this body. We are different from this body and are transmigrating from one body to another. Without this knowledge, all his theories are based on a misunderstanding. Not only Freud, but everyone in this material world is under illusion. In Bengal, a psychiatrist in the civil service was once called to give evidence in a case where the murderer was pleading insanity. The civil servant examined him to discover whether he actually was insane or whether he was simply under intense stress. In the courtroom, he said, I have tested many persons and I have concluded that everyone is insane to some degree. In the present case, if the defendant is pleading insanity, then you may acquit him if you like, but as far as I know, everyone is more or less insane. And that is our conclusion as well. Anyone who identifies with this material body must be crazy, for his life is based on a misconception. Shama Sundara. Freud also investigated the problem of anxiety, which he said was produced when the impulses of the ID threaten to overpower the rational ego and the moral superego. Srila Prabhupada. Anxiety will continue as long as one is in the material condition. No one can be free from anxiety in conditioned life. Shamasundara. Is it because our desires are always frustrated? Srila Prabhupada. Yes, your desires must be frustrated because you desire something that is not permanent. Suppose I wish to live forever, but since I have accepted a material body, there is no question of living forever. Therefore, I am always anxious that death will come. I'm afraid of death when the body will be destroyed. This is the cause of all anxiety, acceptance of something impermanent as permanent. Shamasundara. Freud says that anxiety develops when the superego represses the primitive desires of the ID to protect the ego. Is such repression of basic instincts very healthy? Yes, for us, repression means restraining oneself from doing something which, in the long run, is against one's welfare. For example, suppose you are suffering from diabetes and the doctor says, don't eat any sweet food. If you decide to eat sweets, you must repress that desire. Similarly, in our system of brahmacharya, there is also repression. A brahmachari should not sit down with a young woman or even see one. He may desire to see a young woman, but he must repress the desire. This is called tapasya or voluntary repression. But aren't these desires given outlet in other ways? For instance, instead of looking at the beautiful woman, we look at the beautiful form of Krishna. Srila Prabhupada, yes, that is our process. Param drishtva nivartate. If you have a better engagement, you can give up an inferior engagement. When you are captivated by seeing the beautiful form of Krishna, naturally you have no more desire to see the beautiful form of a young woman. Shamasundara, what's the effect of childhood experiences on one's later development? Srila Prabhupada, children imitate whoever they associate with. You all know the movie Tarzan. He was brought up by monkeys and he took on the habits of monkeys. If you keep children in good association, their psychological development will be very good. They will become like demigods. But if you keep them in bad association, they will turn out to be demons. Children are a blank slate. You can mold them as you like, and they are eager to learn. Shamasundara. So child's personality doesn't develop according to a fixed pattern. Srila Prabhupada, no, you can mold them in any way, like soft dough. However you put them into the mold, they will come out, like parats, chapatis, or kachauris, types of Indian pastries. Therefore, if you give children good association, they will develop nicely, and if you put them in bad association, they will develop poorly. They have no independent psychology. Shamasundara. Actually, Freud had a rather pessimistic view of human nature. He believed that we are all beset with irrational and chaotic impulses that cannot be eliminated. Srila Prabhupada. This is not only pessimism, but evidence of his poor fund of knowledge. He did not have perfect knowledge, nor was he trained by a perfect man. Therefore, his theories are all nonsense. Shamasundara. He concluded that it was impossible to be happy in this material world, but that one can alleviate some of the conflicts through psychoanalysis. He thought one can try to make the path as smooth as possible, but it will always be troublesome. Srila Prabhupada. It is true that one cannot be happy in this material world, but if one becomes spiritually elevated, if his consciousness is changed to Krishna consciousness, then he will be happy. Oh, that was fast.
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you so much for reading. Now let's go to Shikshastakam prayers. I need to still finish some rounds and then I need to watch the Ekadasi story. Cheto darpanamarjanam bhavamaha davagni nirvapanam shreyah kairava chandrika vitaranam vidyavadu jivanam anandam buddhivardhanam pratipadam purnamritasvadanam sarvatma snapanam param vichayate Sri Krishna Sankirtanam.
नाम अकारि बहुडानि च सर्वशक्तिस्तत्रार्पितानि यमितस्मरणे नक्कालः यथार्थितव कृपा भगवान् ममापि दुर्दैवान् इर्षम् इह जानिनानुरागा.
Trinadapi sunichena tarorapi sahisnuna manina manadena kirtaniya sadahari.
Nadanam nachanam nasundarim kavitam vajagat isakamaye mama janmani bhavadat bhaktir ahaitukit vaye.
Ainandatanuja kinkaram patitamam vishame pavam pudo kripa tavatpada pankaja stida tuli sadr samvichintaya.
Nayanam galadashrutaraya vadanam gatkada rudaya gira pulakarnichitam vapukada tavana magrahane pavishyati.
Yugayitam nimeshena chakshusha pravirshayitam shunyayitam jagat sarvam govinda virahena me.
Ashlishya pinastumam adarsanaan marmahatam karotuva yata tata va vidaratu lampato mat prananatas tusa eva napara.
Translation. Glory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtan, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for the humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss, and it enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious.
O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them.
One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly.
O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service, birth after birth.
O son of Maharaj Nanda, Krishna, I am your eternal servitor, yet somehow or other I have fallen into the ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet.
O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up? When will the hairs of my body stand on end at the recitation of your name?
O Govinda, feeling your separation, some considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I am feeling all vacant in the world in your absence.
I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he shall remain so even if he handles me roughly by his embrace or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally.
Haribol, Shri Siksastakam ki jai, Harinam
Jai,
ki jai, Panchatattva ki jai, Jananda Prabhu ki jai, Shri Krishna
Jai,
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai, Jagat
Jai,
Bhaktivedanta Swami Shila Prabhupada ki jai,
Jai,
Ki jai, Nitai Gaura Premanand
Jai.
ki Haribol.
Hari Bol.